All right, good evening, everybody. It is Michelle Poe here with my handsome hubby, Sean Poe, and the incredible Dr. Jess Larson. We want to welcome you on this wonderful, beautiful Monday evening, September 16th. I can't even believe it. We're going to hop right to it because I've just been so blessed to meet Dr. Jess and just not only become a business partner with her, but become such beautiful, cherished friends. Our friendship, our bond is just something that's so beautiful. And I'm just grateful for it. And for those of you that are new, like I was just saying, we welcome you to the family. And what you're going to find here with this LifeVantage One Person Big Difference family is you are going to find your people and your family, and you're going to feel love and support and it be in a safe place. So I'm just going to introduce Dr. Jess real quick. This is incredible background here. Dr. Jess Larson, Jessica Larson, DNP, FNP-C, brings a wealth of experience as a doctor of nursing practice with over 13 years of experience in her various healthcare settings. Her diverse background includes working as primary care, emergency room, hospital, and nursing home provider. Her master's thesis was on the gestational programming of obesity. Is that not perfect for everything that we're walking into right now? Over the years, Dr. Larson has gained a reputation for her attentive approach to patient care, her dedication to complex medical cases, and her ability to make patients feel heard and valued. Chills. Her two special interests are in the effects of environmental toxicities on health and management of obesity to prevent disease and decreased quality of life. Dr. Larson has become increasingly frustrated with the limitations of traditional Western medicine, which often fails to address the underlying causes of patients' health issues. She is so determined to offer a higher level of care. Thank you, Dr. Jess, and fulfill her true calling. Beautiful. She is loud of the power of activation. Hallelujah. And she has also decided to pursue further education in functional medicine in order to provide an integrative approach to care in the near future. Driven by her strong belief that every individual, every person matters, right? Every individual deserves comprehensive and root cause medicine. She is committed to making a positive impact on the well-being of the world. Dr. Larson believes that God wants his people truly, truly healed. So our team name here, as you guys know, is One Person Big Difference. Can we all give Dr. Jess a round of applause and a welcome for being that one person that is truly making a big difference? Dr. Jess, please come on. Hopefully you've got sharing ability. She's going to teach us about GLP-1, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We are blessed to have you. Thank you for being here and serving all of us.
Thank you, Michelle, and thank you, Sean. Thanks for having me. I am honored to be here, you guys. And before I share my screen, I just want to touch base on how big this product launch is for me personally. So not only have I struggled to treat obesity with my patients for the last 13 years, but I've personally struggled with obesity my entire life. I come from a family where both my mom's side and my dad's side are heavy. I grew up loving really rich foods. I was the overweight kid in school. I got picked on. And so I've had my own journey. And I have had personally no real good answer to weight loss solutions. And that's kind of what led me down the road of really researching this when I was in my master's program, because it was confusing to me that I struggled so much more than some of the other people in my life. And I knew that it had to be more complex than just simply calories in versus calories out. And oftentimes that is what is preached, that if you just reduce your calories and you exercise enough, the weight's going to come off. But we know, especially as more science emerges, that it is absolutely not that simple. And the whole point of what I'm going to bring up today, you guys, is that understanding GLP-1 can be very basic. I want you all to leave tonight feeling very comfortable in sharing this new product that is going to launch in a really short amount of time. I don't know what Sean said. I can't remember how many days, but like less than a month, you guys. We are going to have the world's first GLP activator in our hands and the ability to share that with people. And I am telling you, that is more powerful than anything that I can prescribe to somebody. And I'm just so excited about it. And so not only having my own personal struggle with obesity, but then also just struggling to give people a good answer in the clinic setting. When I first caught wind that this was coming down the pipeline, I cried because I knew how powerful this was going to be, not only for my own well-being, my family's well-being, but for every single person that comes into my path that I can help with this, whether it be in a clinic setting or elsewhere. This is going to be powerful, you guys. This is not a short-term solution like pharmaceuticals are. This is a lifelong solution for people. We are going to start treating, shouldn't use the word treating. We are going to be able to give people a solution that resolves their weight problem at the root cause. And so I just want each and every one of you to leave tonight feeling confident in being able to take this product on October 11th and share it with every single person that you know. I want you to be able to speak the language of very basics with obesity and with GLP-1 and not have any issues feeling like you have to connect them to somebody in the medical world, because you are going to know what you're talking about at the very basic level. And that's really all that you really need to know, that this GLP-1 activator is unlike anything that the pharmaceutical world can offer people, and that it's natural and their bodies have the ability to do what the pharmaceutical world is trying to do. So I'm really excited about it. And I'm going to share my screen now. Okay. Second. Does it look good on your side? Okay. So GLP-1, the basics. Not only the basics, but what is the society impact of activating this pathway? How is it going to affect the people that we come in touch with? How is it going to affect each and every one of us, our families? And lastly, how is it going to affect our business? So I kind of went back and forth as I was preparing this information for you guys. I had quite a few other things on the agenda, but we don't have hours, even though I could sit here and talk to you about obesity and GLP-1 for hours. So this is kind of what I came up with my main goals for tonight, the things that I want you to leave here tonight understanding. And that is, I first of all want you to understand what GLP-1 is. It is kind of like a hashtag out there. People oftentimes relate it to things like Ozempic, Mounjaro, Wegovy, but that's not what we're talking about. And we're going to talk about specifically what GLP-1 is outside of the pharmaceutical realm and what activating that looks like. We're going to talk about what a decrease in your natural GLP-1 does to your body and how to maybe recognize that maybe you have not enough GLP-1 production going on. We're going to talk about your gut health, and we're going to talk about why your gut health is so important, especially for GLP-1 production. And then lastly, we're going to talk about how this launch is going to affect society and how it's going to affect your business. So first and foremost, before we go any further, we have to talk about what GLP-1 is. And most of you probably don't even know what GLP-1 stands for, and that's completely okay. By the end of tonight, you're going to know. GLP-1 stands for glucagon-like peptide. And yeah, that's probably just another bunch of big words. So I broke it down for you. So glucagon is a hormone, and it's a hormone that specifically helps you regulate your blood sugar. So there are quite a few hormones in your body that do this, but GLP-1 is one of those hormones. And it is a peptide, and that's another big word, right? Or a scientific word. But essentially, a peptide is just a further breakdown of that glucagon And it's a short string of amino acids. So kind of in chemistry terms, it's a building block of that protein. And to take it down a step even further, what is an amino acid? Well, it is the most fundamental building block of your proteins. And it's also the building block and backbone for compounds like neurotransmitters, which is really important for the way that we send signals in our nervous system, and for hormones. And specifically tonight, we're talking about hormones because GLP-1 is a hormone. So we are not talking about GLP-1, Ozempic, Mounjaro, Wegovy. There's a few other ones on the market. We're not talking about those, you guys. That's a synthetic GLP-1. That's a man-made GLP-1. It's a prescribed medication. That is not what this is. We are talking about the real deal, what God gave you, GLP-1 that your body actually produces. So to make it very simple, GLP-1 is a hormone that you produce. We're going to talk about where, but before that, how old is GLP-1? Well, GLP-1 has been around as long as you and I have, but it wasn't actually realized or discovered until the 80s. And so GLP-1 has been around or discovered probably a shorter amount of time than the majority of us on this call, right? It's younger than the majority of us on this call. Now, 1986 might sound like a long time ago, but in scientific terms, like GLP-1 is in its infancy. And what we know about GLP-1 right now is so small compared to what we're likely going to know in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. And I'll be honest, like even just in the amount of time, like over the course of the last 2 years that I have looked at the research until I was even preparing to talk to you guys about GLP-1, there is so much more research out there. And every time I look things up, I'm finding that scientists have found more and more links to what GLP does in our body. We're going to get into that, but I just want you to understand we haven't even hit the tip of the iceberg with what GLP-1 is doing for our bodies and how important it is. And the reason that I am emphasizing that to you is because we know GLP-1 is really important, and the impact that it's going to have on our bodies and other people's bodies is incredible. But we are just going to continue to learn more and more and more about how many positive impacts on our body and our physiology upregulating GLP-1 with activation is going to be. All right, so GLP-1. We talked about the fact that it's a hormone, but where is it produced? GLP-1 is actually produced in the intestine. It is produced throughout the entire intestine, but very small amounts of it are actually produced in the small intestine. The majority of the production is actually in the large intestine. And I'm a picture person, so I try to put some pictures throughout this PowerPoint so that you guys can kind of see what I'm talking about. So at the bottom of the screen here, you'll see that large intestine. And you can see the ascending colon, the transverse colon, and the descending colon. I'm going to flip over to the next slide. In this picture, you'll actually see what an L cell looks like. And the L cell is actually where the GLP-1 is produced in the colon. You can see on my slide here, I say that there's a little bit of GLP-1 produced in the pancreas and the nervous system, but that's very, very minute compared to how much of it's produced in the large intestine. The majority, like I said, is the large intestine. Okay, so this is the picture I was looking for. So here you actually see a cross section of what those L cells look like in the large intestine. You can see the small intestine coming in to attach to the large intestine, and then you see the ascending colon here. So ascending colon is the same thing as large intestine. And then you can see the transverse colon coming across here. So the majority of the production of GLP-1, like I said, is coming from the L cells, which are in the large intestine. Another thing I just wanted to mention to you guys is a huge point of putting a lot of these pictures in is for you to go back and reference if you kind of want to look at it again, or if you want to share these pictures with somebody that you might be talking to, or if you want to like just take a picture out and use it for a post, feel free to do that. I put them in here to help you. Okay, so when we're talking about GLP-1 tonight, we are not talking about anything synthetic. We are not talking about medications. We are only talking about your natural GLP-1, what your body is producing naturally. So what benefits does GLP-1 have on our body? So when the scientists actually found GLP-1, they kind of found it accidentally. What happened was they had taken a part of the large intestine out, and then they noticed that there was a decrease in regulation of blood sugar. So that's how they started to look into what GLP-1 was. That's how they found GLP-1. But we know that a huge component of GLP-1 and its purpose for our bodies is to actually help us produce or secrete more insulin. So it does bind to the beta cells in the pancreas, and you don't have to remember all the nitty gritty of this, but it binds to the beta cells in the pancreas to help us produce more insulin. Now, what I want you to understand from that is that GLP-1 helps your body secrete more insulin. And what insulin does is it helps our bodies take the glucose, the sugar that's floating around in the bloodstream, and get it into the cell that helps us use food for energy. So what happens when we don't have enough insulin is we end up with an elevated blood sugar, which is what you see with diabetics. All right, another thing that it does, which also relates to diabetes, is that in the liver, it actually reduces glucagon release, which is a sugar release. So when it decreases the release of that sugar, it is actually helping keep our blood sugars, what we call in medicine, euglycemic, or at the right amount, the right normal level. So we don't want it too high because that is hyperglycemia. That's what happens with diabetics. It causes inflammation, and a lot of bad things can happen on our body. When it's too low, we feel terrible. Our brains don't work the way they're supposed to because our brain doesn't have enough energy to function, as does the rest of our body. So we want to have a normal blood sugar level. And so what it does is it works in the liver to reduce how much sugar is being put out so that our sugar isn't getting too high. Another really cool thing that GLP-1 does is it slows down digestion. Now, at first, people think, well, that might not be such a good thing because I don't want to get constipated. Well, with natural GLP-1, we're not getting constipated. You're only seeing that with the synthetic GLP-1s. When you slow down digestion in a natural way, what it's allowing you to do is feel fuller faster and feel fuller longer. So when you're feeling fuller faster, what that means is maybe you don't have to finish your whole plate of food. Maybe you only need half of a plate of food. It also means that when you're fuller longer, food is sitting in your stomach a little bit longer. You're not reaching for a snack 30 minutes later or an hour later or whatever it might be, because you're satisfied for a longer period of time. So this is a huge component of when people are talking about how food is satisfying them longer and they're feeling the need to eat a lot less. This is where it's coming in. From a physiological standpoint, what slowed down digestion is helping the body do is that food isn't getting dumped down into the small intestine and eventually the large intestine as fast. So as the food moves down into the digestive system a little bit slower, then the insulin can be released at a slower pace and the food can be digested a little bit better because the hormones that are needed for digestion are being released at a more stable level. So you're getting more out of your food. This is where this next bullet point here is where GLP-1 gets really interesting for me. And that is how it works with the brain. And I think if you ask anybody who's on the trial, they're going to tell you the connection with the brain until you experience it. It's hard to even put your finger on it, but it is amazing how it starts to turn down your hunger signals. So maybe there's this candy dish at work and before you could never walk past it without putting your hand in it. you all of a sudden, when your GLP-1 is upregulated and working the way it's supposed to, you have more willpower to not put your hand in that candy dish and actually think about the fact that I don't need those M&Ms or I don't need those Skittles or whatever it might be. Now, scientists just a couple of years ago did this amazing study, and it's one of my favorite studies I think that was ever done. So they were studying GLP-1 and they were looking at functional MRIs. And for those of you who have never heard or seen a functional MRI, an MRI is where they're looking at a part of the body. In this case, they were looking at the brain. But with the functional MRI, they usually do something to the body and then they see what part of the brain lights up when they're doing whatever they're doing. So in this particular study, they were looking at people without upregulation of their GLP-1, and they were showing them pictures of food. So think about, like, I always talk about how I'm sitting on the couch watching the Super Bowl and all those food ads come up. And then all of a sudden you're not really hungry, but you're like, oh man, those nachos looked good. I think I might go fill up my plates again. This is what those scientists were studying. So they were looking at when somebody looks at pictures of food, what parts of their brain are lighting up? And does GLP-1 downregulate those parts of the brain that are lighting up? So interestingly enough, I was rereading the study last night. It didn't take longer than 2 weeks for them to start seeing that those signals in the brain were starting to decrease on the functional MRI, even just 2 weeks after their GLP-1 was upregulated. To me, that is so cool. Is one of my favorite studies, like I said. So that right there proves what everybody who is on this product tells you, and that is that their food noise, the word food noise that everybody's talking about, like the thoughts of food that are in your head all the time, those definitely get turned down by the GLP-1 in your system. Okay, so moving on to some other really cool things, like these are some of the newer studies that I recently have read about. They're definitely have been around only for a couple of years. One thing I noticed in my own practice is that individuals who were having heart attacks and strokes in the last year were coming back to me in a clinic setting, and their neurologist or their cardiologist wanted me to put them on a synthetic GLP-1. And I didn't know why to begin with, because this is all brand new. So I started looking at why that was, and everything we're going to talk about in this bullet point explains it, but we're going to talk about it in a natural way. So what scientists are finding is that GLP-1, it has so much healing power for the cardiovascular system. And when I say cardiovascular, I mean brain and I mean heart. So what they found, what scientists are finding, is that after somebody has a heart attack or stroke, so it's already done, they've already had that happen to them, there is actually improved outcome long-term, so their ability to recover from that event if they have an increase in GLP-1 in their system. And so they started to delve into why this was happening. And what they're finding is that increase in GLP-1 actually reduces blood pressure, and that's completely independent of weight loss. So at first I was thinking, okay, maybe it's just because they're losing weight, their blood pressure is going down, but no, it's independent of weight loss that their blood pressure goes down. They have a decrease in inflammation, which I think all of us activators really know how much we love to decrease inflammation, but this is just another way on top of NRF2 to decrease inflammation within our system. It reduces oxidative stress. How cool is that? On top of NRF2, now we have another activator that decreases oxidative stress. It causes vasorelaxation. Now that is just a big word. That means that you take a blood vessel and you relax it. So as we get older, our blood vessels become less and less relaxed naturally. And that can be one way that our blood pressure goes up as we get older, is because our blood vessels don't have the ability to contract and then to relax again as they're supposed to. They get stiffer. And so what we know is that GLP-1 actually helps those blood vessels to relax. Now, this is where it gets even cooler, and that is that it has anti-arteriosclerotic mechanisms, which means that the plaques or the blockages that we all develop in our arteries, it stabilizes those plaques, because what happens when one of those plaques breaks off and flows down the piping, that's how we get heart attacks and strokes. So it stabilizes those plaques so that they don't break off, but then it also helps prevent that plaque from getting worse. So if you are somebody who maybe has a family history of vascular dementia, which is a dementia that's caused from blockage in the brain, or maybe you have a strong family history of heart disease, or maybe you have a family history of stroke, these are the people that should be looking at the benefits of natural GLP-1 to hopefully prevent those things for themselves way down the line. Okay, so that's a very neat thing. Some of the newest research that's coming out, there's not a whole lot of it out there, but it's actually showing that individuals who have impaired kidney function, so I have on here GFR, glomerular filtration rate, that just means like a decrease in the amount of filtering that their kidneys are capable of. The scientists are finding that increased GLP-1 has actually been able to reduce further decline by up to 40%. And if you talk to anybody who has kidney disease, they will do anything to prevent their kidney function from getting worse, because nobody wants to end up on dialysis. And I don't want anybody to end up on dialysis. So that is something that I'm excited for further studies to come out and show us exactly the mechanism that's behind that. And then lastly on here, I have reduction in NASH, which is fatty liver disease. Okay, so this picture, I'm not going to go through all of this, but I put this in here just kind of for your own reference, and so that you have a picture that you can use if you want to post, or you want a simple picture to go back to show all of the amazing things that GLP-1 does. As you can see, we didn't talk about everything that GLP-1 does, or at least everything that we know that GLP-1 does. We'd be here all night. I just hit the main things. But if you want a really good summary of kind of the list of things that we know GLP-1 is capable of as of current, this is a really good depiction of that. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about the basics of GLP-1, and I think if you understand those basics, you'd be in really good shape to talk about this new product with the average person. But let's talk a little bit about what happens when our natural GLP-1 production starts to go down. And I'm just going to be completely honest. We live in a really, really toxic environment. We eat bad food. There's all kinds of toxicities in our food, whether it's like food dyes or chemicals or what have you. Even if you're a really healthy person, I know that occasionally you eat fast food, or you might occasionally get some things that are not completely organic, non-GMO, whatever. All of those things can damage our GLP-1 production, not to mention things like aging and stress. So we want to know what happens when our GLP-1 production goes down. What does that look like? How do we recognize it in ourselves and in other people? And then we're going to talk about how to get that back up again. All right, so when I was reviewing the literature on the things that actually decrease GLP-1 production, I was a little bit surprised, because I thought for sure things like the environmental toxicities that I just touched on would be in the research. But what I found is that it's not actually in the research. It hasn't been looked at yet. But like we talked about, GLP-1 is really in its infancy. I think those studies will be done in the future, but right now, they haven't been done. And these are the things that I could find have been proven to decrease our GLP-1 production, and that is diabetes. And they have actually shown in the studies that the higher your blood sugar levels are, and the longer you have diabetes, the further your GLP-1 production goes down. Diseases like obesity, this is kind of a chicken and an egg type situation, and I couldn't really get to the bottom of that. If obesity causes decreased GLP-1 production, or is the decrease in GLP-1 production actually causing the obesity? But we do know that they're linked. We do know that individuals who have polycystic ovarian syndrome, otherwise known as PCOS, those women have a decrease in GLP-1 production, which is sad because those individuals also have a high insulin resistance level and typically struggle with issues with obesity just because of the hormonal imbalance that goes along with polycystic ovarian syndrome. But we know they also have decreased GLP-1 production. And then individuals who have the non-alcoholic fatty liver disease have been found to have decreased GLP-1 production. Interestingly, and I think you guys are going to find this extremely interesting, especially after you find out what's inside of the GLP-1 activator, is the individuals who have inadequate soluble fiber in their diet have decreased GLP-1 production. And also individuals who don't consume enough protein have decreased GLP-1 production. So for those of you who are sitting at home and are not on this amazing product yet, I'm hoping that you kind of take some of this information right now and start to naturally start to increase your GLP-1 production even before you get your hands on this product. So 2 things that you can start right now tonight is to start consuming more fiber and start to consume more protein. Okay, now the last bullet point is the big one, and that is poor gut health. Because like we said, GLP-1 is produced in those L cells in your gut, specifically in your large intestine. And if that environment is not good, if your gut is not healthy, then it is not going to produce the hormone the way that you want it to be produced. So I did find a ton of research that talks about poor gut health and the food that we consume and the environment that we live in. And so we know that those things are linked to an unhealthy gut. But like I said, we haven't been able to actually say that those things downregulate GLP-1. Does that all make sense to you guys? So the next thing that we're going to talk about, no, okay, I take that back. We're going to talk about this first, and then we're going to talk about gut health. But you guys can see why it's so important that we understand gut health and how to make our gut as healthy as possible. Okay, so this is another slide that I primarily put in here for you guys to have just as like a resource. But you can see that when somebody's GLP-1 production is downregulated, which I would assume the majority of the population has a downregulated GLP-1 unless they have incredible gut health and they're a very healthy person, you can see that these are the things that are happening to them. So their fasting glucose goes up. Their insulin secretion goes down, both of those things causing an elevated blood sugar, right? Beta cell transduction becomes abnormal. I'm not going to go into the details of all of this, but in a nutshell, they start to take in more food because they're hungrier. Their energy expenditure is increased. Their locomotion is increased. Their body weight is increased. It doesn't sound like a good thing, right? So we want to make sure that we have adequate or above adequate GLP-1 production so that we can live a healthy life. So how do we actually improve our gut health? Because that's at the very, very basic premise of getting our GLP-1 production increased. So this is actually one of my favorite slides on here. I get really excited when I talk about gut health. It's fascinating to me. Before we talk about how to make your gut healthy, we have to understand a little bit about our gut. And the first thing to understand is that there's 100 trillion microorganisms in your gut. Like that is far beyond how many cells we have in our body. That's incredible. 99% of that gut is an anaerobe, which means that it lives without oxygen. And I thought that's kind of an interesting fact, but that's because that gut bacteria is farther up in the colon where there isn't as much oxygen. Only 1% of our gut bacteria is aerobic, meaning that it functions with oxygen. Babies' guts are considered sterile while in the womb. And so it's through the birthing process that their gut flora is initially established. And the reason that I'm even telling you guys this is because I want you to understand how our unhealthy gut is starting from the very first days of life. So think about how if a baby is not born vaginally, they're born by cesarean section, they're not getting all of that early establishment of their gut flora. And then you take them maybe to the NICU and you give them antibiotics, which sometimes that's necessary. But early antibiotics can really wreak havoc on our guts from early days in life. It isn't until a child is 2.5 years old that their gut bacteria, or microbiome is the other word for it, is similar to that of an adult, which I think that's pretty incredible. Like, to me, that just shows how important it is that we give our children good food. We give our children a variety of food. We try to avoid antibiotics at all costs. In obesity, and I'm actually going to speak to all diseases, when you actually look at the flora or the bacteria that's in the gut, we know what is a normal level of different bacteria. And in different diseases, we actually see some of those bacteria upregulated and some of them downregulated. So specifically in obesity, you can see that these two bacteria here, Bacteroides and Methanobrevibacter, I practice that just so you know, are decreased, but the Enterobacteria and the Ruminococcus are actually increased. So those are not at normal levels, which brings me to my next point, and we'll talk about this. Do we have to start feeding our gut the right bacteria in order to start producing the GLP-1, or is there another way to do it? And we're going to talk about that in a second. I'm going to move my slide over here. Okay, so how do we improve our gut health so that we can increase our GLP-1 production? It is incredibly important to take a prebiotic and to take a probiotic. So when I heard this was first coming out, I kind of assumed that this product would have a probiotic in it. And a few of you were in those conversations with me, but I was completely wrong. And now that I look at the research, I understand why. We don't have to feed our gut those bacteria. What we need to do is create the right environment for that bacteria to flourish. So that bacteria already exists there, that help the L cells produce the GLP-1. One of the most important things you can do, and the research proves it, is take a prebiotic. And for those of you who don't understand the difference between a prebiotic and a probiotic, the probiotic is the bacteria, the good bacteria that you're feeding the gut. The prebiotic is actually the nutrients that those bacteria need to exist and to flourish. So I would strongly recommend that if you are anxiously awaiting this GLP-1 to come out, if you are not taking our pre and probiotic, do it. And specifically, the prebiotic is incredibly important because then you're going to start feeding the bacteria that need to be regulated, to be upregulated for that GLP-1 production, for those L cells. You need to consume a variety of foods. If those of you who have never listened or read the book, How to Fast Like a Girl, I would strongly recommend reading that book. It talks a lot about gut health. In that book, she actually encourages people to strive for 200 different foods per month. And that is to give your gut microbiome the nutrients that it needs. So I'm just going to throw that out there because I think it's an important statistic to know about. Increase your fiber intake to 30 grams per day. And we talked about why that's important. Review your medications with your healthcare provider to see if they might be affecting your microbiome. I'm just saying, like, maybe some of those people that are taking a daily antibiotic, is it completely necessary, or is there a different way to tackle that problem? Add more fermented foods like yogurt, kimchi, sauerkraut, kombucha to your diet. Eat more polyphenols. And then avoid things that could be toxic to your gut, like artificial sweeteners, alcohol, caffeine. And then, of course, I put on there, if you really want to improve your gut health and increase your GLP-1 production, on October 11th, get on that new GLP-1 activator. Okay, so lastly, if it isn't obvious already, how big could this launch be for society? And what does that mean for your business? So, obesity, it is not a problem that only a few people suffer from. These statistics are insane to me. I actually was looking at some 2018 statistics and I had them on the slide, and then I found some newer statistics. And in just a few short years, so these statistics, I think, were from 22. The increase in percentages went up like 3% in just a few short years, which to me is just devastating to even read about. But there's 41.9% of US adults who are obese, and that's 100 million people. Now, when I say obese, I'm not even talking about the people who are morbidly obese. I'm just talking about the people who fell into that category with a BMI over 30, like all the way up to 40. So this statistic is actually quite higher if you include people who are considered overweight, so above a healthy BMI, but not quite at that obese category, or people who are in the dangerously high obesity levels. You can see here 9.2% are severely obese. What's even sadder, you guys, is that our children are becoming obese. 19.7% of children are obese, which is 14.7 million. And the prevalence of obesity has increased from 30.5% in the early 2000s to 41.9%. That's crazy. And I just think that what we have, this gift that we can give the world, is probably the first thing that I've seen in my career that really has the full potential to start turning down that dial. Okay, when we talk about the business side of it, obviously there are so many people that need this. That's going to be an obvious increase in our business. But let's talk about the dollars for a second. So obesity is expensive, not only for our country, but it's expensive for every single individual who's suffering from it. And these statistics, I think, are really important for all of you to understand. So the average obese adult spends $1,861 more dollars, healthcare dollars per year than the person that has a healthy weight. If they're severely obese, so a BMI of over 40, they are spending $3,097 more per person. That's not per family, that's per person, okay? So when I broke down the cost of our product that was just, the prices were just released, if they are paying with subscription cost $179.99 for an entire year, that's going to be $2,159.88 per year. That is not too far off from $1,861, but that person is going to feel a heck of a lot better. It is cheaper for that person who is severely obese. Not to mention, they are getting higher quality of life. They feel better about themselves. You're likely extending their life expectancy. Now, take those figures again at $159.99 if they upgrade to become a consultant and join our team. The cost for being on this product for an entire year would be $1,919.88, which is once again very close to the cost of being obese. I know if I had to choose where I put my money, I would rather be on something that upregulates my GLP-1 than put it into the clinic that I have to keep going to because I don't feel good. I want to put it into health instead of sickness. So I think if you look at these numbers and you talk to people about how much obesity is costing them, they might see a different, they might get a little bit of a different idea in spending those dollars on a product that is going to help them get the weight off and keep it off for the rest of their life. All right. Also, when I did the math, if that individual really says, I can't afford this product, like I would do anything to lose weight, but I just don't have the money for it. How many people would they have to talk to in order to get this product paid for themselves? 9 people on average, 8 to 9 people. If they took this product and they shared their story with somebody else, it's about 9 customers on this GLP-1 activator would pay for their product every month. And I think most of us know at least 9 people, if not 10 plus times that, that could benefit from activating their. So I think it's going to be incredible what this GLP-1 activator does, not only for our businesses, but also for society as a whole. So the final takeaways, what I want you to walk away with tonight is that GLP-1 does not have to be complex. I don't want all of you to freeze up and think, I don't know enough about the science to be able to share this with people. What you need to understand is that GLP-1 is a hormone. It's produced in your large intestine. If you can't remember large intestine, just remember it's produced in your digestive system, and that everyone is already making it. But there are so many variables in our environment that decrease our production, that every single person benefits from actually operating their own natural GLP-1 production. You cannot make too much GLP-1. I've had that question asked. It's physically impossible to do that. GLP-1 improves your health. It does not make you sicker in any way. Natural GLP-1 only makes you healthier. A reduced GLP-1 would lead to disease. Gut health is essential for GLP-1 production. So it emphasized to everybody that you know, get your gut healthy. And there are multiple ways to do that. We talked about that. But being on a pre and probiotic is incredibly important. If you are not on the GLP-1 activator right now, do not be dismayed, because you can start working on your gut health right now. And the last thing is that obesity rates are soaring. You guys, we have a gift. This is the most incredible gift that I have ever learned about. And I just cannot wait to share it with the masses. And I hope that all of you feel the same way, because people like myself are literally sitting there praying for an answer, a lifelong answer to their weight, for their health, for their, we didn't even go into all the neural benefits, but there are so many benefits to GLP-1 production. People are praying for what we have launching on October 11th. So I hope you understand how incredible this gift is. And here is a list of all the resources for any of you who want to go and read some of the research yourself. One of the really interesting ones that I talked about was the study on the functional MRI. Trying to find that in here for you. Let's see here. Okay, well, I can't find it right off the top of my head. If any of you want to know which one it is and not have to look them all up, you can just message me and I can tell you which one it is.